Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een. This is part two on the Karamat, the Charismatic talents of Shaykh Ahmad Tijani radiallahu anhu. We, in part one, reviewed over some of the spiritual Karamat that were reported by his close companions and family. And in that video, we talked about how the mu'jiza is for the prophets and the karama is for the walis. The mu'jiza is more of a challenge in which people challenge the prophets to make a charismatic talent or mu'jiza, but the karama of the walis is not like that. It is something that just flows or Allah bestows upon his servants. Whenever things happen, it happens not by the way of a challenge. In this video, we are going over some of the physical karama. The physical karama, as we did in part one, the spiritual karama, in which one of them, the highest of any karama that any person can do, that any Muslim can do, is to follow the sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam to the T. That is the largest karama, spiritual karama. Now we are going over some of the physical karama that has been reported from Shaykh Ahmad Tijani. And first, it must be known, as for his physical karama, this book that these reports are from the Fathul Rabbani, the divine opening, regarding what the Tijani disciple requires, by the Shaykh Muhammad ibn Abdullah ibn Hasanain al-Shafi at-Tisfawi at-Tijani, out of Egypt. And he begins, as for his physical karama, Shaykh Ahmad Tijani, he would hide them as much as possible. He would order that they should not be recorded, as we have already mentioned in part one. However, his companions, may Allah be pleased with them, were of the opinion that his prohibition of that only applied during his lifetime, because part of the affair of the complete saints, such as himself, is to not exult in such things, as is known from the books of the people of Tasawwuf. Thus I say, and also that is a prophetic inheritance, to not show off the miracles. The Prophet ﷺ, whenever miracles happen from him, most of the time he would try to cover them. He continues, thus I say, among his karama is that he, Shaykh Ahmad Tijani, achieved the level in Walaya of Qutbaniya in the month of Muharram, in the year 1214 after Hijrah, which is June of 1799. He achieved this feat at Mount Arafat, but it is known that he was also physically in Fez during that occasion. On that date, he was known to be in Fez, but that miraculous event happened when he was on Mount Arafat, and he did not leave Fez from those who witnessed him in Fez on that day. That is from the category of karama called the folding up of the earth, tayyat al-ard, folding up the earth, or traveling long distances over short periods of time. And one of the scholars said that this is something that Shaitan is able to do, to travel quickly around many parts of the earth. So if something is possible for the accursed Shaitan, then this is something that's definitely possible for the righteous, and whoever Allah wills for it to happen. And the lifting of veil, such that someone is seen in two places or multiple places while he is physically located in another single place. Another of his karama is that he, Shaykh Ahmad Tijani, granted permission to one of his students to be in khalwa, and he let the student be in khalwa in his city, far away from Shaykh Ahmad Tijani, and he assigned him a specific amount of time for that khalwa, for that seclusion. However, that person, the student, he became enamored with the openings that he was receiving while he was in the seclusion. And he stayed in the seclusion longer than what Shaykh Ahmad Tijani specified for him. And the student said that he felt the presence of the Sheikh with him in his seclusion. And the Sheikh spoke to him, "What caused you to disobey me?" The Sheikh was at the time in Fez, while the student was in his own city, which was a long distance away. Another one of his karama is that he came upon one of his students who reached the level of ma'rifah. The student was in his home reading one of the books of the great walis, and it caused him to feel excessive veneration for that wali who wrote that book, which nearly caused him to have an inclination for that wali, which is harmful for the disciple. Meaning, when you are connected, the thing that connects us with the shuyukh, with the walis, is our hearts and the love that we have. That's the connection. And if someone is fully endowed with love of the wali, whatever the wali is blessed with will be connected to that student. So the aspect of a Marie's heart is very important, and this is the danger that's being referred to here. So the karama was that this student, he started reaching a certain level of marifa, and he was able to understand the books of one of the great walis of the past. And while he was reading the book, he started to feel connected to this wali and started to love him more, and start to feel an inclination of his love growing for that particular wali. So the sheikh appeared in front of him, took him by the hand and said, "Ya Fulan, are you Tijani or what?" Like basically, are you my student or no? And he mentioned the order affiliated to that saint. Like, are you Tijani or are you part of this other wali's tariqah who had written this book? And at the time, the sheikh was in the desert, while this companion, this student, was in Fez. Also from that, during his life, two of his companions were traveling to perform Hajj. And these two students got into a disagreement, got into like an argument or a small fight. And one of them did something wrong to the other one. And that day, they came upon a water well. The people traveling in their camels became afflicted with thirst. And one of the companions that did the wrong, he went to the well. And when he went to the well, one of the camels saw that there was water near the well, and the camel started running quickly towards the well. And when that man lifted his head, he saw the camel running towards him, and he tried to move out the way. But the camel, like in the moment that happened, the man was about to fall into the well. And by the mercy of Allah, he saw the sheikh holding him. And the sheikh stood in between him and the camel went another way. And he then turned his face towards that companion, the sheikh, and said to him, "My companions, Ya Allah, my companions. Please don't harm my companions." So that companion recognized that had occurred because of his harming his companion. And when Shaykh Ahmad Tijani rebuked him, while at the same time saving him from falling into the well. And that companion, that man, went to his brother and made peace between them. And at that time, Shaykh Ahmad Tijani was in Morocco, and those two people who were traveling, they were in the Hijaz. They were in the Hijaz traveling. Another of this karama is that he informed his student, Sayyidi Muhammad al-Mishri. Sayyidi Muhammad al-Mishri is one of the first students of Shaykh Ahmad Tijani, and he is the student that used to lead Shaykh Ahmad Tijani in Salat. In the beginning of his In the beginning of his wilaya, Shaykh Ahmad Tijani did not like to lead the salat out of humbleness. He used to have someone else lead the salat. And his student, Sayyid Muhammad Mishri, who was an alim and faqih, used to lead him in salat. And this is one of his first students, Sayyid Muhammad al-Mishri. So one of the miracles is that Shaykh Ahmad Tijani informed Sayyid Muhammad Mishri of the arrival of an oppressive minister before it happened. And it happened just like he said it would. He also informed another of the destruction of a town before it happened. And that happened as well. Another time he spoke about the arrival of one of his companions and he arrived. Like say, like they're sitting in the house and he tells them to open the door for such and such who's coming. And however, Shaykh Ahmad Tijani, used to speak about such things that he used to say, my heart speaks to me about such and such occurred to my mind. He would tell his students about themselves, but by keeping it general. Like my heart speaks to me about such and such that happened to so and so, or this occurred to my mind. Another karama is that he foretold France's occupation of Algeria. He will often refer to that and transmit explicitly and by way of allusion that it will definitely occur. The Turks controlled Algeria at this time, and he predicted that they will lose the lands to the French. And from what he intimidated to one of his elect companions, the manifestation of which occurred, it happened after his death. And he told one of his companions what will happen. He told him to take grain, to save grain, because when it's time of harvest and milling grain, so he told all of his companions to save the grain to the mill, keep it in there. And the student said, my teacher, the mill is closed. There's no need for the servants. And Shaykh Ahmad Tijani told him, call the servants, the workers, and order them to accompany it so that it will not be pilfered on the way. He said something similar on another occasion regarding some dough to make bread when he sent it to the bakery. The companion said, we did not understand until the great inflation occurred between 1824 and 1825. This is almost 10 years after Shaykh Ahmad Tijani passed away. At that time, people began to need to take such measures as the Sheikh had commanded, meaning that things became so expensive during that time where it was difficult to buy those things. 10 years earlier, Shaykh Ahmad Tijani was telling them to save this meal, save the dough, save the wheat, save all these things. And people didn't understand it because everything was okay during that time. But those who followed his instructions, they understood that something would happen, and something did happen. There was a great inflation in the year 1824 in Morocco. Another one of his karama is that when his Khalifa, Sidi Ali Harazim, when he intended to make Hajj, he had been mentioning to one of the elect to whom he confided certain matters that the Prophet ﷺ married him to a woman in Tunisia. So the Prophet ﷺ gave him permission to marry a woman in Tunisia on his way to Hajj. When he arrived there, when he said what happened. But however, after some time, Sidi Ali Harazim divorced the woman. And the news of that divorce reached the students of Shaykh Ahmad Tijani. And one of them was surprised by it, and it bothered him a little bit. Like the shaitan started playing with his thoughts. So like how? Why he divorced the woman? Why did he divorce her? And one day that man who was thinking about this was sitting with Shaykh Ahmad Tijani, and no one else was with him. He was alone with him. So it was a good time to speak to the Shaykh. He wanted to speak to him, but he didn't feel right. He didn't feel right like asking this question, but it was bothering him, and there was something that kept preoccupying his mind. Then suddenly, Shaykh Ahmad Tijani lifted up his head, And he came close to him and said something softly in his ear. And the sheikh said to the man, the woman did not make salat. And he didn't say anything else. And that thought departed from the man. So he knew that Sayyidi Ali Harazim divorced the woman because she did not make salat. Another karama of Shaykh Ahmad Tijani is that one of his companions took some wool to sell in Fez. He was trying to sell some wool from the sheep. However, when he arrived, he found that the wool market was stagnant, meaning nobody was really buying it. So he became worried about that. So he went to Shaykh Ahmad Tijani to get some advice. Nevertheless, he found him surrounded by his companions, so he sat with them. He didn't say anything. And it was not long before the sheikh asked about the price of oil and was told about it. The sheikh started asking about the prices of different things. What's the price of oil? Then he asked about the price of grease and then the price of meat and other things until he arrived at the price of wool. And they answered him. They said the market for wool is not good right now. And Shaykh Ahmad Tijani said wool is among the most important goods that people cannot do without. So its market will inevitably recover. Whoever has some wool, he should not become dissatisfied with its low price. Rather, he should guard it in a safe place. And then he, radiallahu anhu, Shaykh Ahmad Tijani mentioned several days that will pass. He mentioned the number of days that the market should pick back up. And the man received his answer, and he received his answer without even saying anything to the sheikh. The sheikh just started asking the prices of various things and gave his advice about anyone who's selling wool. He should not be discouraged because the price is going to pick back up in such and such amount of days. And the days that the sheikh mentioned are the days that the market started picking back up, and he found a lot of people asking for wool. And they bought it from him, that man, and he made a good profit on it. And that's something that's known about Shaykh Ahmad Tijani. Is reported from his companions, the people who lived with them, that no matter what you came to him for, whether it was dunya or the akhirah, whether if it was knowledge or about their worldly life, he would advise them to the point where it will always be something beneficial for them, and they will find truth in what he said, whether it was knowledge about the deen, knowledge about the religion or business, or about the akhirah, or about tafsir or hadith or anything. They found their intention with him always successful. Another karama is that one of the scholars of Fez used to suffer from like a great depression. You know, people suffer from being like very, very sad and depressed. There was one scholar in Fez that was known to suffer with this great bouts of depression. And when that used to happen to that scholar, he used to order his bed to be taken to the Zawiya of Shaykh Ahmad Tijani. And they would take his bed to the Zawiya and he would stay there. And when he stayed there, he would be relieved immediately. And because of that, he would tell people to adhere to the protective Zawiya of Shaykh Ahmad Tijani. And in a poem in which he praised him, and the scholar wrote these verses of poetry. Indeed, a Tijani is a crown with no equal. Allah grant us his attention and direct it towards us. Thus speak at length about his exploits, for they are pearls, and adhere to his protective canopy. You will attain his quenching drink. Also from the Karama of Shaykh Ahmad Tijani is that there was a seditious man from the Berbers who was known as Amhurush. And that man, he was like a rebel. And he gathered the tribes of the Berbers, and they had rallied a big army to take over Fez and to destroy the leading or the king of Fez, of Morocco, which was centered in Fez. A man from the descendants of the Prophet, ﷺ, a Sharif, joined those forces secretly. He didn't tell anybody. But his intention was to go to Fez. When he saw that this army was going to Fez, to take over Fez, he looked at this as an opportunity to go to Fez. And when they arrived at the nearest mountains to Fez, he left them and went to Fez. So the army is camped outside of Fez. And at this point, he saw it as an opportunity to go inside to visit Fez. And one of the important matters of Fez was for him to join himself to the people of Allah. He wanted to meet the people of Allah because Fez is known as a city of walis. And people mentioned Shaykh Ahmad Tijani to him. So he went to the home of Shaykh Ahmad Tijani and he was given permission to enter. When he entered, he found the Shaykh busy in doing zikr. And he was standing. Shaykh Ahmad Tijani was standing and walking back and forth. The Shaykh indicated to him to sit down until he finished with his zikr. So he sat until he finished. Then he stood and greeted the Shaykh with peace. The Shaykh asked him where did he come from? What's your lineage and what's your situation? What are you trying to do? And he informed him. Then he asked him to transmit him the wird. He asked him, Shaykh Ahmad Tijani, to give him the wird. And Shaykh Ahmad Tijani turned towards him and gave him the wird, his Tariq Tijaniya. Then he asked the Shaykh advice regarding immigrating from the land of the Berbers. The Shaykh asked him, do its women pray? He said to him, some of them pray. So he ordered him not to immigrate at that time. So in that instance, it's a big secret that a lot of times the situation of a certain land depends on the state of the women. The state of the women is a reflection on the society that's being led by certain individuals or being led by good leaders. But women are the reflection of a good society, and the actions of the women show if a society is not too good. And that is one of the departing advices of the Prophet ﷺ before he passed away. He advised those around him to take care of the women. And also another hadith that alludes to this fact is the Prophet ﷺ said, whoever has 3 daughters, whoever has 3 daughters, and he raises them well, and they become righteous and grow to be good, righteous women, the parents will be given paradise. And that shows the importance of raising very good Muslim women. So the Sheikh asked the man, do the women there pray? Like, why are you asking to immigrate? Do the women pray there? He said, yeah, some of them pray. He said, okay, so don't leave yet. And then he asked him about this man, the seditious person who made this army to come take over Fez, and what was their intention. And the man informed him of the strength of the army and the military. So the Shaykh Ahmad Tijani turned towards their direction. He turned towards their direction, and he said, like blew something. Then he bid the man farewell, and he supplicated for him with good. So the man left immediately, intending to go back to where he came from. On the following morning, he reached to the place where he had left the army. However, he didn't find anyone there. And he asked about them, and it was said to him, at such and such time yesterday they were routed. Like something happened where yesterday something happened to the army and they all left, but no reason for that was given. And that man was certain that whatever happened to them was about the same time that Shaykh Ahmad Tijani had turned towards their direction, and through his blessing and spiritual concentration, the army left. We will continue more in part 3 in the next video on the Karamat of Shaykh Ahmad Tijani, inshallah. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد الفاتح لما أغلق والخاتم لما سبق ناصر الحق بالحق والهادي إلى صراطك المستقيم وعلى آله حق قدره ومقدار العظيم سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين.